My friends, you won't believe what happened yesterday. I will show it to you, but first of all, we have to zoom into Avdiivka, we have to zoom into the coal plant. And as you can see, this is the waste mountain, the Terikon as they call it. And you can see half of it is now occupied by the Russians. And there's a crazy story with it. This is the obsession of the Russians in the area, especially the 114th Brigade. They have sacrificed everything to get this Terikon mountain. I will now reenact, because I kid you not, this is actually what happened. Comrade Commissar, we have taken Avdiivka coal plant waste mountain Terikon. It's now under Russian control, and the 114th Brigade has put and installed a flag on top of mountain. And we only lost 5,000 troops in doing so. Small losses. And also 350 armored vehicles. Молодец, Ivan, that is great news. Supreme Leader will love this news. Small losses but big gains. We have gained one mountain, our flag on top of mountain. Just like in Berlin, where my grandfather put flag on Reichstag with 4 watches on his wrist. It's proud moment. Comrade Commissar, this just arrived. Ukrainians have used their incredibly cheap Kamikaze drone to blow our flag into bits. Козёль долбоёб, Ivan, блядь, okay, you take next 5,000 men and 300 armored vehicles and you take this mountain back. Пошёл нахуй. This is the waste mountain, my friends. I kid you not, look at this. This is the Russian flag planted and the 114th Brigade. They are so proud. For them, it's like the moment from World War II. Because in Europe, Europeans moved on. But in Russia, they never moved on. It's like a religion for them. The photo when the Russian soldier is putting the flag on a Reichstag is like an image of God for them. So this here is a reenactment for them. They're so proud. And then the Ukrainians used the cheapest, most mass-producible Kamikaze drone they had to blow these 2 flags into oblivion. This is insane. Also, yes, Russians lost hundreds of armored vehicles to take this mountain and thousands of troops. And if we look at it on the map, they only were able to occupy half of the mountains, and the latest report actually says that they have been pushed back from the mountain. Now, this mountain, yes, it has military value in the area, but the most important is the coal plant. It's a maze of metal workings, much like Azovstal, and much like Azovstal, it is also owned by the same guy, Rinat Akhmetov. He is a Ukrainian oligarch and the richest man in Ukraine. Now, this is a true Ukrainian fortification in the area. It has underground passageways that shield Ukrainians from Russian bombs, and if necessary, they come on the ground, repel the Russian attacks, and go back underground. This is why Russians are not able to surround Avdiivka, because they have to take the waste mountain Terikon and then the coal plant. 2 impossible tasks, 2 meat grinders. These drones, which I mentioned, what they use to blow these 2 flags into bits, they're incredibly cheap. I know exactly, because they cost $700 a piece. Why do I know this? Because in Kiev I was able to fly around with one of these drones with the SBU Special Forces unit, which I cannot say. Now I'm doing a fundraiser for them. We're giving them more of these cheap drones, and I'm giving you the possibility to fundraise these drones. We almost have the amount, there's a little bit missing. Go to the link in the description below, watch the whole documentary and donate. And I will make a video for you of handing over these drones personally to the Special Forces unit. And you will get more videos like this. If you want more footage about stuff like this, then head on to my Instagram, link is in the description below. I post everything there before it goes to YouTube. Now, my friend, I'll read you an analysis by Tatarigami, the Twitter account. He does an amazing threads on battles happening in Avdiivka. I'll read you one, and it gives us every bit of information we need to know about the Russian mind thought process of this battle. Through visual analysis of satellite imagery, Tatarigami's team found Russian military vehicle losses in Avdiivka between October 10th and October 20th. The total number exceeded 109. Indicating a significant loss of approximately aligning to a brigade-sized force in just 10 days. An entire Russian brigade knocked out coal to get to Terikon mountain and to plant that flag on the mountain, and then the flag was blown into bits, so an entire brigade was sacrificed for this flag. The actual count of destroyed vehicles is notably higher. Tataregami's team excluded about a dozen vehicles with low to medium confidence due to inconsistent imagery coverage. In some cases, it was impossible to determine if a vehicle had remained in place for a while or was in motion. All new lost vehicles are indicated by a red square on the imagery, while old losses that were already present at the end of September are marked with white square. So this 109 is like foolproof, visually confirmed lost Russian vehicles, knocked out cold vehicles, but it's not all. I have reported about 300 because a huge portion of the vehicles have not been visually confirmed. The overwhelming majority of losses were primarily armored fighting vehicles, including BMP-1s, BMP-2s of various configurations, T-72s, T-64s and T-80 tanks in different variations, MT-LBs, BTRs and transport vehicles. In total, these losses amount to 109 visually confirmed losses. Now there are more. Also, Russians, I don't know why, but they assault with trucks also. For some reason they do that. The operation's scale and the involvement of multiple brigades strongly indicate that this is being conducted at the army level. We also see some evidence about additional reinforcements being deployed to the Avdiivka area, but further details cannot be disclosed at this time. Now what this means is that this is a Russian thought-through operation. It's not like, oh, let's just send them there. No, it is well prepared, well thought through, and this was their actual plan. Some people in the West might excuse the Russians that, oh, they just do things like that. No, this is their ability to think operations through. They prepared about 3-4 brigades to strike that one location. They prepared them for a long time, moved them into the area, gave them the information, trained, rehearsed, and then sent them all into the meat grinder, thinking that this is gonna be a good plan because we planned it in ahead. It makes the whole thing even more bizarre and sadder because I would not think an army who actually plans and prepares for any kind of offensive operations would do things like Russians are doing them in Avdiivka. Despite reports of old equipment use, Tataregami's team identified a significant presence of modern vehicles and equipment in coordinated battalion-level assaults, further underscoring the operation's importance for the Russian command. The more I hear about this being a well-planned offensive operation for the Russians, the more I am bamboozled or bizarred. How the hell can this be planned? This was their goal? Because if you actually plan an operation, you would do it differently because you have to think. Upon analyzing the initial phase, Tataregami's team concluded it was a long-planned, not a reactionary operation. The observed pattern suggests Russia invested substantial time and resources, expecting significant losses to achieve their objective. So these losses for the Russians have been planned in. This is how the Russian army operates. Despite large losses, the enemy persisted in employing more mechanized forces to deploy the limited success they had achieved, with the aim of securing dominant positions, disrupting logistics, and controlling waste heaps like the Terrikon. The Russian vehicle losses have now surpassed those incurred during Siversky Donetsk crossing in 2022. It's likely that these losses have already exceeded or will surpass the vehicle losses sustained by the Russians in Vuhledar area between November 2022 and April 2023. Siversky Donetsk river crossing for the Russians in one day, I think they punched about 70-80 armored vehicles into 1 square kilometer area right close to the front line, and Ukrainians pounded that area with everything they had. And in one day, in one small location, about 70 Russian armored vehicles were knocked out cold. Now this is being worse. What we're seeing here is worse. 2 independent sources on the ground estimate Russian vehicle losses at around 200. Tataregami's team's current assessment is primarily focused on geospatial evidence, hence they have chosen not to include this number, as they currently lack supporting satellite imagery of it. But I tend to agree it's closer to 200. However, the situation is far from stable. Russian forces continue to extensively use guided air-dropped bombs, so glide bombs, and artillery strikes, along with deploying Lemur or light multi-purpose guided rockets. Lemur rockets are the rockets that the Ka-52 Alligator shoots out, and unfortunately they can be shot out a few clicks from the front where Ukrainian manpads cannot reach them. And these rockets, unfortunately, are quite precise and destructive for Ukrainian armor. Fortunately, Ukrainians don't deploy a lot of their armor in defensive purposes because it is pointless in these kind of battles. So the Ukrainian armor losses are minimized, and since the coal plant of Avdiivka is a lot underground, a lot of the passageways are underground, see, these Lemur rockets' damage is minimized compared to some other frontal areas. My friends, Turkish President Erdoğan has sent the ratification of Sweden accession into NATO into Turkish parliament. Now Erdoğan calls all the shots, so of course the parliament is not going to say no. So Turkey has said yes to Sweden joining NATO. Sweden will join NATO. Now the only question is Hungary. NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg told allies that Sweden should join NATO at the latest of 28th or 29th of November. Now this is very optimistic because Hungary is a question mark. Swedish officials said that after they join NATO, they are ready to consider Saab Gripen fighter jets to be deployed into Ukraine or sent to Ukraine. Now, Saab Gripen is a very capable fighter jet, incredibly capable. If Ukraine would have those, I think the sky would not be contested anymore. Ukraine might even achieve aerial superiority. Why is Hungary a question mark? Well, because they are the only EU member and the only NATO member who has now not ratified Swedish accession into NATO. Orbán is a Putin sympathizer. He is an anti-European Union player. In European Union, he's also an anti-NATO player. He had a personal meeting with Putin in Beijing before the whole Belt and Road conference began. Orbán has personally blocked a lot. We're talking hundreds of millions, if not even over €1 billion to be sent to Ukraine from the EU. Because Hungary is in EU, they have the veto right for decisions made by the EU, and they veto sending the money, so they are against helping Ukraine. Orbán is against helping Ukraine, and he's very much, what he says is pro-Putin, a Russian sympathizer. So Hungary's future in NATO and in the EU, in my eyes, is questionable, as long as Orbán or the party right now is in power. Now this is the Baltic Sea, right? Here is Estonia, here is Tallinn, this is where I am. Finland is already in NATO. This is a huge headache for Russia because before Finland was neutral, Russia did not have to deploy 400,000 troops on this 1,000 long kilometer border. Well, now they have to do that. Of course they have to, but they can't because they don't have these troops. But they will in the next 10 years, and this is a lot of resources wasted for the Russians. Now, their troubles even continue because when Sweden joins NATO, Baltic Sea will become Swedish internal sea. And the most important thing in the Baltic Sea is the Swedish aircraft carrier. That's what they call it. The unsinkable aircraft carrier of Gotland Island, this one. This island is heavily militarized by Sweden, and who owns this island? Owns the Baltic Sea militarily. This has been said about 300 years ago already. Peter I knew it, Swedish King Karl knew it. They all tried to control this island, and right now Sweden controls it for the longest time, and they have heavy military presence, and combined with Finnish and Swedish navies in the Baltic Sea, Russians don't have a chance. This is a huge blow to the Baltic Sea fleet of the Russians and to the Russian interest in the Baltic area in general. I have been reading the comments. I mostly read all of the comments on my videos, and some of the people are explaining Putin, explaining Russia, or trying to apologize for Russian behavior or give it a reason. For in my eyes, it's enabling. They say, oh, Russia, Moscow is part of an European plateau. Between Moscow and Berlin, there are no mountains. Russia needs to take more territory to protect Moscow. Look at Estonia, my friends. Estonia, my capital, is 4 hours drive from the second biggest city of Russia. We don't have any aspirations to expand. Latvians the same way, Lithuanians the same way. Why do the Russians have the right to think they can expand in expense of other peoples? They don't have that right. So the argument that many channels on YouTube say that the European plateau is why the Russians need to expand, this is enabling and it's incredibly short-sighted. The second argument that NATO expansion is why Putin attacked Ukraine, well, my friends, NATO expansion is voluntarily. Nobody forces Finland or Sweden to join NATO. They want to join NATO. Putin is playing the card that NATO is like this forceful union that expands, and Putin needs to protect the neighboring countries against NATO and protect his interest. Estonia is not Putin's interest. Estonia is my country, my people, my language and my culture. It's not Putin's interest. And I decide I want to be in NATO and European Union. Putin has no say. Any Russian has no say in this. So Putin protecting Russian interest against the expansion of NATO is again enabling the Russian war crimes and incredibly short-sighted. Now, my friends, I have to zoom into Ukraine again because we're going to Kherson, baby, yeah. And look, we zoom into this settlement Krinky. Now this map doesn't show it, but you can actually connect this yellow line, the Ukrainian bridgehead over the Dnipro, all across this beach because they have connected it all. Russians don't have a physical connection to Dnipro River anymore. I will now read you a Russian military blogger Filatov's report on the Russian situation on the Dnipro River. Good morning. I am a fighter of the 810th Marine Brigade, call sign Avust. I decided to write about the real situation in Krinky while I have connection. The Ohoils, which is a very bad word for Ukrainians, work very hard with kamikaze drones and destroy any equipment in a fairly large radius from the shore. After which they cut us off from the support of the equipment and strike with cluster munitions at the places where our infantry is concentrated, preventing us from developing an assault. Our electronic warfare cannot cope with the Ukrainian drones, or it's not there at all. So those who are screaming that we cannot recapture a couple of houses here or there for so long, join us. Romanov and two major are the only ones who gave a normal assessment of this situation, unlike the blogger Ossetian, for whom everything is always good. And yes, the military police near Radensk well understood all the hospitality and kindness of the Marines, after stopping the loaf with the wounded. Why do I read this? Because it's a Russian source not saying that everything is great. And this is how you can know it's a trustworthy source. They say that they don't have an electronic warfare systems to cope with Ukrainian kamikaze drones because there's so many of them. And yes, there are, because I'm also giving drones to Ukrainian special forces. It's also admitting that they cannot move the Ukrainian bridgeheads. They cannot push them back into the river since Ukrainians have fire superiority. This is the situation on the Russian-occupied bank of the Dnipro River. Where do we go now, my friends? It's always a surprise. Alright, I'll tell you, we'll go to Bakhmut. And here I want to show you a video published by Dmitry, September. Russian soldier films a dugout party he's having with his comrades in the Bakhmut direction. Let's watch this party. 12th of September, Russians are in a dugout drinking, having fun. You know what they usually do in the front lines. As long as there is alcohol, Russians are fine. They don't care. Very nice. Good party. Woo! It's war, but we don't care because we're Russians. Now this is October, the same soldier who filmed the party 1 month later in the same dugout, only outside. Now, I cannot show you the video, unfortunately. I am sorry, but what happens in this video? They got hit with Ukrainian artillery and a Ukrainian attack. All of his friends are knocked out cold. Not so happy anymore. Everybody, he films them one by one, the trench is destroyed, the weapons are broken, he's the only one left. He will be knocked out cold. Now, my friends, I want to show you a video filmed on the Berdyansk airfield. You remember this grand attack where Ukrainians took out 9 Russian choppers stationed on the ground about 2.5 weeks ago, with the first strike made with long-range attack MS cluster munitions? These munitions are M74 APAM explosives, and you can see them actually. This is the airfield, boom, small hole on the ground, you can see it. And this is not isolated, not alone. This whole airfield is filled with these holes. A few square kilometers of ground is filled with these holes, as you can see them everywhere. And these explosives are not only explosions on that, they also make splinters, destroying everything in a cloud of shrapnel around them. 9 choppers were burning maybe more were destroyed. You can see this chopper doesn't have rotors anymore because they were damaged. This means this chopper has to be transported away on land. Cannot fly anymore. It is an insane damage, and Russians have to push their aviation assets 150 kilometers from the front. Berdyansk airfield is no good no more. This gives Ukrainians more time to react if Russians are airborne. And now, another sad day for the Russian aviation. It continues because Russians lost another Ilyushin 76, this time in Tajikistan. At the time of lifting off, the plane caught him on fire and it had to be stopped and grounded, and it almost burned to the ground actually. Now the crew was okay, they came off the plane, but the plane was lost. Now why this happens? Well, because Russians hate maintenance. They don't maintain their planes, those stolen from the Western airline companies or their own. And the truth, the very robust, simple truth with planes is, you don't maintain, they're gonna burst in flames spontaneously. Something will catch fire, the whole plane burns to the ground, people will get hurt. It is not a sentence that, oh, maybe it doesn't happen to the Russians, or maybe no. It is, in fact, happening right now. In a week, Russia loses about 1 plane to maintenance. I remember reporting this for like a year now. Their planes are falling off the sky. They're transport planes, old planes. I mean, Ilyushin 76 is almost, 40 years old? And if you don't maintain that, it's just gonna burn. And this is what we're seeing. Now, my friends, the favorite part of the video, butchering of the Patreon names. If you like my channel and my style and you want to support, become a tier 10 and above patron, and I'll be butchering your name with my Estonian pronunciation. Or Estonian pronunciation. Oliver Long. Thank you. Plakski, Lars Olof, what is it? Lars Olofmark, Olajon Bjorkum. Have I not? I have said your name many times. You keep coming back. Thank you, my friend. Stanley Hai. Thank you to these 5 people. My friends, until my next update, report and video, which will be tomorrow, Slava Ukraini, and bye-bye.